Hello, Paul Cox here, and this morning I was on Talk TV on the Mark Dolan breakfast show, and of course, it being Saturday after the local elections on Thursday and all of the results now coming in thick and fast, and we can see there's been a huge victory for Reform, a devastating for Labour. I personally think not so brilliant for the Greens, and maybe better than expected for the Tories, although incredibly bad all the same. However, with Reform doing so well, I thought it would be remiss if we didn't point out the elephant in the room. Even if you extrapolated out how successful Reform were in the local elections this week, they are unlikely to get a full-out majority and become the next government. That's if a general election was to take place tomorrow, essentially. However, there is a chance of a right-wing coalition, and of course there are three flavours of right-wing party. It starts with the Tories, goes slightly further right to Reform, and then out to the actual right with Restore. Sometimes I think that Restore don't always get the mention on TV that they deserve. If you look at the results from Great Yarmouth yesterday, every single seat that Restore stood in, they won, and they won handsomely. People are placing faith in Nigel Farage. Testament to that is the results that have come in just this week, of course. However, there is still a nervousness around whether Nigel Farage and Reform can deliver the change that's required. And make no mistake, the change that's required is huge. Nigel's going to have to deliver on his manifesto, and he is going to be fighting, literally and metaphorically, the blob, the civil service, the Lords, institutions up and down the country, everyone who didn't vote towards the right wing. It's going to be incredibly difficult. So, on Mark's show, I said we should consider what Restore might do. And my theory is, if Reform do not deliver, then Restore will be waiting to take on the challenge. Here's what I said.
Great to see you. I'm sort of like very, very sort of flowery in my praise of you.
Yes, I love it.
Yeah, it's because I've
great
had
for my ego.
It's because I'm heavily medicated.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I don't mind.
No, none of this is real.
Okay, but if you look, I don't mind either way.
What you're witnessing this morning is like Michael Jackson towards the end. Because they put me down.
So many jokes come to mind there.
They have special stuff to get me to sleep, special stuff to get me up. None of this is real. Listen, folks, we've got so much to get through. Paul, I want to ask you, I'm not saying Reform will save Britain. I don't know. It's a question, not a statement. Can Nigel Farage save the country?
Well, we've got this situation at the moment where it's like we're in the deep end, Great Britain metaphorically in the deep end of a swimming pool drowning, and anybody who gets in to try and save Great Britain will eventually save them. We don't have anyone at the moment. Keir Starmer's abandoned us. I mean, the Greens, what do they stand for? We'll get on to that in a bit. But, of course, Nigel Farage can save Britain, absolutely. And I think the country has placed a bet on him yesterday. I know it's the local elections, but it's a clear indicator in the confidence that people got in Nigel Farage. So I think, yes, why not?
Well, I think the issue you've got is that we've tried Labour. We've tried the Tories. I was watching one of those rolling news channels yesterday, and they spoke to some locals in the Red Wall, and there was an old lady, and she said, you know, I've given Labour my vote, I've given the Tory, I've tried them all, nothing's worked, so give him a chance. That seems to be a resounding message. And the other issue is that at every election poll, every politician says, we are the change candidate. I think what's proven to be the case is that they've not meant it. We've not had change from Labour or the Tories. It has been the Uni Party. You cannot say that Farage is not the change candidate.
No, he would be brand new, so that is a change. I guess the fear is, and we should balance this out slightly, that if he doesn't follow through on his manifesto promises, I think the only fear people have, particularly from the right of politics, is Nigel Farage will steer too close to the centre. He'd align too much with the blob. I'm not saying he would. It's the fear, because in order to enact change, he's going to have to make serious moves as soon as he gets in. Going to have to follow through on his promises, because if he doesn't, a version of the status quo that is slightly better is no good for anybody. We are far too far gone. We need to make sure that we are essentially deleting the convention and going no more. And people need to ride roughshod over the blob. They need to ride roughshod over process. It doesn't, for me, I think I keep using the word convention because it's been in place, stood still for 100 years. And we've arrived at where we are. And it's no good for us. It's incredibly unhealthy. Change is required, and we've got to rip it up, and we've got to start again. I'm not saying absolutely everything, but the ECHR's got to go. The way the blob have complete control over whoever's in government, irrespective of what their manifesto is, has got to change. We've got to allow people to lead, and if we're going to put people in power, much like in the US, then let them follow through on their manifesto. If you're gonna, if you're gonna vote for Brexit, deliver Brexit. If you're gonna vote for Farage and he says I'm going to solve the immigration problem, allow him to do it. Nobody can stand in front of that because this is what the people have asked for. And even irrespective of you voted Reform yesterday or not, the chances are in the last 20 years you have voted to stop vast amounts of illegal and legal immigration, and nobody has listened.
If you ignore the public, their voice gets louder politically, and it doesn't get much louder than Nigel Farage, the eternal disruptor. The establishment have brought this on themselves, have they not? A lot of them are very sniffy about Nigel Farage. Yeah. They look down their nose at him. Some of them consider him dangerous or an extremist or any of those things, of course, none of which he is. I think actually the great fear, as you mentioned with Farage, is that he'll get sucked into that kind of, central sort of centrist mindset, which he must fight. But the issue is they brought this on themselves. The public have not been heard on immigration, on cost of living, on wokery. And he's been a consistent voice on that. The attractive aspect of Farage is that, like Trump, in a sense, he's not a politician.
Yes.
And he's never sought power. I know Nigel really well. He's never wanted to be Prime Minister. That wasn't the plan. He seeks consequence, not power. But I just wonder, is it Nietzsche who said the best person that should be in power is the one that doesn't want it?
Well, he did, and he was right.
I think he might have put it a bit more elegantly than that.
He may have done, but, let's just take the Dolan version. That's what I say. That's my philosophy.
Unplugged.
Take the Dolan version. Look, you only got to go back to the middle of 2024. This time, 2 years ago, Nigel Farage was not going to stand as an MP. Nigel Farage was kind of done. He'd done Brexit. He'd gone into television, become a broadcaster.
Make a few quid.
He could do whatever he wanted, essentially. But I think he looked round, and a lot of people, cynical people would say, no, that's because he missed the limelight. I think genuinely for Nigel Farage, what he knew was that if he didn't, and I imagine people around him advising were saying the same thing, if he didn't, no one else was going to, particularly at that time. And people have always undervalued his contribution time and again,
and underestimated him.
Yeah. So, look, I believe that Nigel Farage can become Prime Minister. I don't know if that's via a coalition or an agreement, perhaps with the Tories. Let's not forget Restore. I think it'd be remiss not to mention Restore.
They have a lot of supporters and a lot of people like Rupert Lowe, including the world's richest man, Elon Musk.
And what they did in Great Yarmouth yesterday was significant. They won every seat that they set out to win, and there is quite clearly a movement behind them as well. And they're waiting for Nigel to fail. It's a slight issue I have, because I would like to see a coalition of the right. I'd like to make sure that we never saw the Greens anywhere near power. I'd like to see Labour nowhere near power again. So I'd like to see if you had a coalition in the first instance of Tories, Restore, Reform, that would work for me, because I don't think in the first instance, i.e. the next general election, we're going straight to a Reform government necessarily.
I've just had a daydream, which is, I think, a bit outrageous, which is just imagining the makeup of the House of Commons, right, our politics, which is the government is a Restore Reform coalition with the Tories in opposition, and that's it. What kind of country would we have if that was the case?
Well, it could all go.
I think we'd be like West Germany in the 80s. Well, we'd probably have economic growth of about 11% a year.
I sit on the right of politics, and we still need balance. So you still need checks and balances. I don't want to destroy democracy. What I'm saying is the way democracy is run now, via the blob and via people who look down their noses at other people, is over. The convention is over. It's failed. Look at the state we're in. If you are listening to this now and you're part of that convention, you say, oh, absolutely not, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. What's your legacy? Your legacy is migration through the roof. 6 or 7 million people coming into the country over the last 5 to 10 years. Millions of them illegally. Crime through the roof, sectarian politics, benefits through the roof, benefits exceeding what's coming in via income tax, the NHS on its knees. What's your legacy? What are you trying to sell to us? Labour failed, Tories failed. It all started under New Labour, and this was the great beginning. You know, things could only get better. Turned out they could get a whole lot worse.
They most definitely could. And it's interesting just to see how things have played out in the local elections. Some are saying that Reform may not have enough to form an overall majority. I'm not so sure. They've now got a couple of years to build a policy platform to get ready for power. They've also got the ability to prove themselves at a local level. So the fact that Labour aren't going anywhere and that turkeys don't vote for Christmas, I think helps Farage. I think Paul Cox, the last thing he needs is to become Prime Minister tomorrow.
I agree with that, actually. I think a general election this year wouldn't be great. It wouldn't be great at all. And
I think that Reform, if they were the biggest party, I think they'd be very exposed at this stage.
Yeah, don't forget that everybody... Right, what I think a lot of people outside of politics don't realise is that places like the Lords and the Blob, as I keep referring to them, are preparing for a Reform government. They're preparing in a way... They're already trying to enact laws and legislation that could block and make illegal for some of the policies that Reform wants to do. There's plenty of Labour and left-wing lords that are saying about that now. The Blob will absolutely be preparing themselves for a Reform government and making it incredibly difficult because the convention is totally full of over-progressive left-wingers.
Definitely, and I suspect if they do get in, there will be ridiculous riots on the streets. Not my Prime Minister, because that's how illiberal and undemocratic the progressive woke left are. I'm not talking about sensible lefty mates of mine who voted for Tony Blair, etc. I'm talking about the radicals who seem to be the tail wagging the dog of the mainstream left, which is very, very sad. I mean, Nigel Farage, so no designs on power, but he may well win it. And I just wonder whether this, as another metaphor, I loved your swimming pool metaphor, and I've got another one for you, which is the fire alarm. Break only in an emergency. Yeah. Right? That little hammer on the
somebody
chain.
Grab it and somebody smash it.
And old Nigel, he is the hammer on the chain, isn't he?
Yes.
Break in the event of emergency. And that's where we're at. The country is in a critical state, and in 2.5, 3 years' time, it will be far worse.
Yeah, the propaganda's already started. I have a daughter doing A-levels, and she started to get political, and she's doing our A-levels, so that could lead you down a dangerous path politically.
Oh my God.
But you've got to allow
she got a nose ring?
You've got to... No, not yet, no. You've got to allow them to do things.
Is she a member of the Queers for Palestine?
She's not a member of the Queers. She's still my daughter. You know, there's DNA in there that wouldn't allow such a thing.
Why is there DNA in there?
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Sorry, I took that the wrong way. Family show. We've all had a drink. Can you guys please behave yourselves? This is a grown-up show.
She said to me yesterday something quite serious. We were talking about Reform and Farage.
Paul Cox has lost control.
Oh, God, I'll be drinking again. And she said that a vote for Reform is a vote against me. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, Reform and Farage hate women. And I was like, what are you talking about?
Oh, my God.
And she showed me something she'd seen on TikTok. And it's just a list of absolute fabrications of what the right and Reform and Farage believe. And because they're so accessible, these things, to young, fertile minds, that, of course, the first thing they do is believe it. Of course they do. We were all 16, 18 one time. And that's starting now. That's just pure, unadulterated propaganda. And it's not going to go away.
The demonisation of Farage and the Reform Project has begun. It used to be the Tories, now they've replaced it with Farage. The Tories were far right, they were all a bunch of fascists and racists. Now it's Reform. It's the usual script, isn't it? And it's very undemocratic. It's not good because it leads to Charlie Kirk moments where people with the wrong politics are assassinated, because if you tell that many young people someone's evil, they may act on that. So it's a big problem. I was in one of those big electronic shops yesterday, and I was actually in there for the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, why not?
Yes.
Had to turn it off at home.
I was. It was the Apple store.
Oh, okay.
And this is for anyone that wants to know. If you need a bit of Wi-Fi, it's free there. You just
So if you've got an Apple phone, I assume.
I do actually, yeah.
Yeah, you can wander into an Apple store.
Yeah.
And get free Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I was like Tom Hanks in that film, The Terminal. I was in there for like 12 hours. You're like, do you live here?
Just in there, yeah.
Yeah. I got the little bunk bed out and everything. But the bottom line is, I'm in this big shop and I'm hoovering up the Wi-Fi. Which is making the light bulbs flicker, actually.
Yeah.
I'm quite a greedy person. Anyway, I'm in there, and there was one of the people that works at Apple, and then there were a couple of girls, and they were students, and they were ranting and raving about the local elections, and the guy who worked for the Apple store, who apparently is a genius. Did you know that?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, he didn't sound like much of a genius to me, because all he could say is that Reform were fascists. And it was exactly like what your daughter had been told, you know, that they're evil, that they're wicked, that they're far right. They're going to basically deport anyone with the wrong coloured skin. And it was very troubling just to hear this, because it was ignorant, it was illiterate. I'm so happy, as are you, Paul, to probe the policy agenda of Reform UK. I've just said to you on the radio, on the telly, I suspect that today they're not quite ready for power. I think if there was an election tomorrow, they'd struggle, they'd be found out. So there are questions to answer about the project. I think a lot of it is down the pub, 3 pints in policies.
Look, there's
but
a lot of questions.
It ain't Adolf Hitler.
No, nowhere near.
But this is what a lot of people think.
By the way, Farage,
including the genius.
He's centre-right. I know he points it out a lot to try and make us believe it, but he genuinely is. There's nothing about Reform right now that says to me they're anything other than centre-right. There's only one right-wing party probably in the country, and that's Restore. Mm-hmm. In terms of their policies are pure, unadulterated right-wing policies. Yeah. Every single one of them, whether you like it or not, that's the case. Every Restore voter will agree that that's the case. Reform are trying to strike a balance, but between the Tories, which are centre, and Restore, which are very much in the right camp. Although I do believe what we saw yesterday was pretty much the destruction of centrist politics in the UK. You know, you talked about lefties voting Tony Blair. I was a Tony Blair voter throughout my 20s, and I would have considered myself centrist at the time. Tony Blair's politics spoke to young Paul Cox very loudly. I look back now and think, oh crikey, there's lots of things I didn't know. And the chances are, in the 20 years' time, if I'm lucky enough to be here in my 60s, I could think the same again. But what I remind myself now is we are in such a diabolical situation. Terrible situation. The country is heading in one direction and it's incredibly negative, and the Greens want to take us there at 100 miles an hour. Like Starmer and chums are considered moderate on the left, too moderate, too right-wing. They're not going hard enough, fast enough towards progressive politics. We're looking at this aghast, almost terrified, and the Greens want to grasp that and take it with it. They've got this weird coalition between LGBTQ plus and the Muslims on one side, two factions that don't go together, and they get anywhere near power, that it's going to be a massive explosion. I'd ask people to read about Iran in 1979. That's the first thing I'd look at. You know, I'm not suggesting there's going to be beheadings. What I'm saying is these two people are not compatible. We know this. We saw Lewis Goodall this week have a big wake-up moment because he took his, his microphone from that ridiculous podcast up to Birmingham and interviewed people, the Muslim Green Party candidates that absolutely find everything about the rest of the Green Party abhorrent.
Most definitely. Are the Green Party a danger to Britain? How long has Starmer got? And Nigel Farage, can he save Britain? 6:35. This is Talk Breakfast. You are listening to Talk Breakfast. Can Nigel Farage save Britain? George is in Northampton. Top of the morning, George.
Morning, Mark. Morning, Paul. Can Farage save Britain? Is a very big question mark over it, I think. And that's because they've won all these seats on local councils. Now, if Nigel had been in a general election and had won, then he could have enacted his policies. What he's got now is he's got a lot of local councillors who, if they don't fix the potholes, if they don't collect the rubbish, if they don't, clean up the town centre, Reform could get a battering from that, because people will say, well, we've had Reform in here for 3 years thinking about the next general election, and they've done absolutely nothing.
Well, you're right about that, George. The other issue is that a lot of these councils are bankrupt or borderline bankrupt, which means even if they do a brilliant job, they may still have to put up council tax. And the critics of reform will be, of course, drawing attention to that.
Yeah, and that's the big issue, I think, with this massive reform win. Now, I'm pleased to see it happen because we do need the change. And, you know, what we've had with the two-party system has been absolutely ludicrous over the last 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
You know, I actually worked out I've seen 15 prime ministers in my lifetime.
Ridiculous.
And it's just, you know, things have got worse. And I was a Tory voter. You know, I liked Margaret Thatcher, you know, and I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, God, he's like that. Yeah. Towards the end, a lot of people were falling out, but Tony Blair took us in the wrong direction, and I think that was the start of the end, and that's where we're up to now. I think it was Tony Blair that caused the shift in politics to the point we are now, where we've got an extreme left and a sort of centrist right, but nothing to sort of balance the extreme left, which is why the Greens are making their inroads, or not, as the case may be. It struck me that we've had this great influx of reform councillors. They've now got to prove themselves, and if they don't, that will reflect on Nigel and the rest of the Reform Party when it comes to a general election.
Well, George, stay with us because I think you raise a fantastic point. Paul Cox, the suggestion from Paul there is that winning locally could be a poison chalice politically for reform.
Yeah, there is a danger. Good morning, George. Hope you're well, mate. Look, no overall control was the biggest winner yesterday because
my favourite party.
Yeah,
those guys are brilliant.
Big fans. They've gone completely unmentioned as well, haven't they? And one of the reasons that there's no overall control is not all seats were up for grabs. So there's now plenty of local councils out there that have got a mixture of Lib Dem, Restore, Labour, whatever it might be, a complete smorgasbord, and that's also going to make it very difficult as well. But I think what George is talking about is where Reform have got overall control. And of course, we're talking to producer Dean, best looking man at Talk TV.
He most is.
He was saying, look, they've got to deliver now. The easy bits is winning the votes, and I agree with him. I totally agree with him because if you're going to win power, you've got to do something with it. And I imagine nearly all of the people and councillors that have won power yesterday are fairly inexperienced. Because the only party that I'm aware of that really does fit incredibly well is the Lib Dems. That's why they sort of sit there in the background, very steadfast. Everybody's well vetted. You can't, not going to let people like me. They're going to look at my tweets and go, "He cannot work here." But I could probably become.
You also don't own sandals, do you?
I don't own any sandals. Does George own sandals? George, you got sandals?
I'm wearing Crocs at the moment.
Oh, look at you.
George, that's working class sandals.
How the mighty have fallen. But what do you think about what Paul has had to say there, George?
It's, again, I agree with Paul there. The fact that there is no overall control, like Paul says, Reform might want to bring in the changes, but the rest of the council might say, no, you're not doing that, and block everything they ever do, which goes back to the same as what Paul was saying about the blob, the rest of Parliament now enacting legislation that makes Reform's policies illegal. It is touch and go now. We need change, but whether we can get it through is really down
George, is how they perform in the next couple of years. George, you are so right, and in many ways, Reform are now a hostage to fortune, having to run those local authorities which are cash-strapped. Just briefly, George, what do you think about the character of Farage? Because I know the guy well, and I can tell you that he's never had ambitions to be Prime Minister. Does that make him the perfect person for the job?
Whether it makes him perfect or not, I don't know, because you know him, and he's a nice guy. I can only go by the public face, and I suppose if I met him and we got on all right, then I might think, yes, he's the ideal person. I've got to say I'm very mistrustful of all politicians and most people in politics, simply because, when they're out and about, they're all nicey, and behind the scenes, you never know what they're thinking, which was definitely a Starmer trait.
Do you not think that's? Do you not think that's the special sauce of Farage? That in a sense he's not a conventional politician. He doesn't dream of being world king or getting into number 10. As Paul said before the election, he was planning on making a few quid and retiring.
Well, yes, which makes it right. Always look for somebody who doesn't want the power. And yes, you've got the perfect candidate. Look at all the Conservatives we had. They were all fighting to become Prime Minister.
Yeah.
And 4 Prime Ministers later, and it's all gone to hell in a handbasket with Starmer. So, I think Starmer saying, "Oh well, we're going to stand by this" and all the rest of it. He's clinging to power because that's all he ever wanted.
Oh, whereas, that's it.
Somebody who wanted to actually make a difference to the country would have said, "Look, we've messed up. Sorry, lads. Call a general election. You choose the next one, and then you can blame them, not me."
We can but dream. George, brilliant call. Enjoy your company. Call me again soon if you can. David's in Gloucestershire. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Mark. How are we all?
I'm very well. You got Paul Cox here. Can Nigel Farage save Britain?
Well, let's hope so, and time will tell. But I just had a thought about what that last chap said, and I think the Labours, I think they will actually starve the reform councils of cash deliberately from central government to make sure that they do try and fail or they have to put up council tax. That'll be the number one thing they'll do. They'll also push through laws, because they've got these laws about, if an immigrant arrives in your town, you've got to give him everything.
Yeah.
And that's all by law. And then, so I think Reform have got to get, if they do get power, they've got to go into Parliament for a blooming week, 2 weeks, and absolutely strip things out and make a load of laws. But the reason I was sort of ringing about was the fact that you said about, why do these people think Reform is so far right? Well, the problem is the country has been so far left for so long, because even the Conservatives were left, Boris, Theresa, you name them, and then all of a sudden, well, it's like Liz Truss. She tried to turn the country a little bit right, and everybody went, we can't cope with it. It was a complete conspiracy. It wasn't a conspiracy theory. I watched Jeremy Vine when he put his lettuce on his desk on his show, and you didn't pick up on it, but now you realise that what Liz Truss is saying is it was a conspiracy theory to push her out very, very quickly.
She was stitched up. She was done up like a kipper. David, what a brilliant set of points. What do you think about that, Paul?
Yeah, interesting. I like the idea. I don't like the idea, but I can see where David's coming from. Good morning, by the way, David. That sabotage from incumbent councillors is a possibility. Of course it is. We're dealing with human nature here. There'll be a lot of people out there this morning, particularly ex-Labour councillors and the like, that are very much put off with what's happened. First of all, they'll be angry with Starmer, and rightly so. But they'll also be angry with people coming in, and they might want to do that. We'd love to think that they wouldn't, but I'm sure they would. I think David's absolutely right as well about the Overton window in terms of the way, not in the way politics is discussed, but the way people have been led to believe since Blairism. It's gone. He was centre-left, and it's gone further and further left. All of our establishments, every establishment you can think of, even the NHS, has become incredibly progressively left-wing, irrespective of what anybody has voted for or asked for. And that's what Tony Blair did exceptionally well. He said about changing the institutions in this country. So, irrespective of what colour government was in, you weren't going to change those organisations and institutions, and they were going to continue propagating his policy infinitum. So that's why we find ourselves now where, like David says, you see someone who comes in like Nigel Farage, who has a couple of right-wing ideas, and people are aghast, going, oh my goodness, how could you possibly do that?
Well, that's right. There's a comedian called Rob Schneider, and he was on the Trigonometry podcast a few weeks ago, and he said, I'm a 90s liberal, right, a 90s lefty. That makes me far-right fascist now.
Yes. Absolutely, and I think we can all empathise with Rob, because that's exactly where I would say you and I probably were. I mean, it felt like the mid-90s were like halcyon days. I'm sure we're looking back with rose-tinted glasses, but I would have considered myself a liberal at that point.
There are video clips of Barack Obama boasting about deporting illegal immigrants. 3 million on his watch.
And Hillary Clinton.
And lovely Hillary Clinton, how the worm has turned. David, have a lovely day. We always enjoy chatting to you on Talk Breakfast. So much more to come. Let's take a quick voice note from Big Richard on Starmer.
Hi, it's Richard from Cornwall. I had to laugh last night when Keir Starmer, in his statement after the disastrous local election results for Labour, he said, "I refuse to stand down because I don't want to throw this country into chaos." Oh. I'm sorry, Keir Starmer, you have already put us in a state of chaos.
What a brilliant voice note that is. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I wanted to tell you about a post that he put on X yesterday in regard to the May elections. And he wrote, "These are tough results for Labour. There's no sugarcoating it." Now, there you go again with Starmer not taking responsibility. These are tough results. No, these are tough results for me. And he's got to know that he's the most detested politician out there, and he should own it. And if he'd gone and made a speech to the public and said, "Look, I've completely messed up. It's been a disaster. I'm going to turn this ship around. I'm really sorry," then maybe there's a chance. But as usual, he hides behind language and weasel words. You are listening to Talk Breakfast, and we have a voice note from Boz.
Morning, Mark and the breakfast team. Travelling Boz here. Do you know what? That was fantastic to see all these results coming in one by one. A hammer blow to Keir Starmer and his cronies. And is Nigel ready? Of course he is. He's ready. Give it two years, 3 years while they've got all these councils and mayoral things, and it'll prove that they can handle government. As for the King of the North, Burnham, he's not going to make much difference. Or you can get the Queen of the South, and she won't do nothing either, if it is the growler. Listen, and Starmer, come on, let's face it, he looks round now, and he thinks, wow, everyone's deserted me, even his own cabinet. And let's face it, none of them are any good anyway. So, go Nige, go for it, and prove everyone wrong.
Brilliant. You're just chuckling away, Boz. What about Starmer then? Do you think it's a case that he'll be gone by summer?
Starmer chuff, by the way. Couple of zingers there from Travelling Boz. Lovely work, mate. I think that he will be gone. My mindset up until this point is he'll cling on for dear life. But I think the balance is tipping, and we're gradually getting to a point where it's outside of his control. As much as he'll hang on and he won't go anywhere, I think what he'll do is he'll threaten that the markets will implode if he does go, and he'll placate people by saying, "Do you know what? I am going to go. I'm not going to go the term, but I'm going to hang it out, and we're going to make sure we steward this ship safely." However, I just don't think it's going to be possible for him. But by the way, Boz there making a great point about Burnham and Rayner. The reason Burnham is polling so well in terms of popularity is because nobody's seen him in central government for 2 or 3 years, so we have absolutely no idea what he's up to. I'm polling well at central government because I've never been involved. Rayner is in the mire. She has not fixed her tax evasion problem. So, and Burnham's got finding a safe Labour seat for Burnham's going to be tricky. I think yesterday proved that there aren't many safe Labour seats out there. And also, how long does that process take? You've got a
couple of months at least.
At least 2 or 3 months, a quarter of a year. This country hasn't got a quarter of a year. While Starmer just sits there. So. Maybe someone within the cabinet. For me, the worst thing that could happen is probably a Miliband Prime Minister. I mean, God, you wouldn't leave him in charge of anything, would you? Let alone the country.
I'm afraid not. No, and he's been leader before and found wanting. I think that would be a disastrous move. I mean, that's the crazy world we're in, where the alternative to Starmer will probably be worse because they will have to be more left wing if they're going to get the top job.
Well, this is exactly what they can do. There's only 2 things they can do: carry on with Starmer's mission, or bounce to the left. There's absolutely no way they're going any further to the right. The biggest complaints within the Parliamentary Labour Party is that Starmer's too far to the right, which is very difficult to say out loud without laughing. But he's not, and the country needs people to take a right steer, because I think deportations are required. You can't keep allowing fighting age men, as we say, into the country just willy-nilly.
Most definitely. Now, there are plenty of Labour MPs that I agree with, and this show is not an echo chamber. We've both mentioned that we've voted for all different parties in our lives. And actually, I'm often on record as saying that at the next election, I don't care who does the change. I don't care if it's Starmer or Kemi or Nigel, but let's stop the boats, let's get immigration down to a sensible level, let's act net zero, and let's have a country that lives within its means, which is business friendly and supports those who need welfare but no one else. I don't care who does that. And so here's a Labour MP that gets it. Are you ready? Dan Carden on X yesterday. Labour is losing because we're a party that won't say Britain is broken when it is, won't challenge the rules of globalisation, and we're now a party defined only through tax, spend and welfare. This is a Labour MP. And with no answer for working class voters who have been left behind. The question isn't how to win them back, it's whether Labour wants to represent them at all. And then I've got another zinger from Dan Carden. Britain's working and lower middle class communities aren't just voting reform, they're rejecting politics as usual, the lanyard class, a Labour Party they see as run by and for progressive elites, not working men and women. We have to be honest to hear that. I mean, two zingers, and he's right, isn't he?
He is absolutely right. It's very interesting.
He sounds like a Tory MP or a Reform MP.
He does sound like that. What he actually sounds like is an old-school Labour MP.
Yeah.
And a lot of people forget that, well, not a lot of people, I'm sure our viewers and listeners have got great memories, but Labour were once the party of the people. One of the reasons I voted Labour as an 18-year-old is the early part of my life has been growing up on a council estate. I came from quite a working-class family. And there's a sort of value instilled into you. I always talk to hate Margaret Thatcher and stuff like that. Don't now, I appreciate her in retrospect, obviously. But there were parties and there were politicians that represented those type of people, the working communities of Britain. I'm not talking about... There were still leftist loonies throughout the Labour Party, right the way through. But there seemed to be a lot more people of Dan's ilk. And I think if there were more of Dan's ilk, there'd be probably a much better Great Britain.
Most definitely. And, I mean, I think even Blair gets it. It was before the election that Tony Blair advised Keir Starmer. He said, get rid of the woke stuff, the public hate it. He's also recently said, time to scrap net zero, it's making people poorer. I mean, you know, this is Tony Blair, a man who I don't agree with very often. I'll tell you who I always agree with. It's Norman. Here's a voice note. We've got Stormy Norman. He's coming up. It's just, we're going to put 10p.
Good morning, Mark.
There he is.
Norman from Hertfordshire here. Just starting my Saturday morning overtime shift. I was wondering, hypothetically, if Nigel Farage becomes Prime Minister and the Conservatives get the second largest number of votes in a general election, then would it be Reform in power and the Conservatives in opposition? How would that work? Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Norman, there, working an extra shift just to pay the bills. This is the kind of working class, or at least alarm clock Brit that we're talking about. Your reaction to what Norman had to say?
So in Norman's scenario, if we extrapolate out what Reform did yesterday as a potential general election result, the Reform Party wouldn't have a full majority to govern the UK, but they would be the biggest party, so they'd have a choice. They'd have to make a pact, probably looking at the results, with the Tories, who actually didn't do... There's two things that strike me about yesterday, which we haven't spoken about yet. The Tories didn't do quite as bad as people thought, and I think that's much thanks to Kemi and what she's done in recent months. And Greens did not do anywhere near as well as predicted. I mean, I don't know what the numbers are now because they're growing each day, but we're expected to have seen 600 plus Green seats, and it's in the order of 300.
It is.
That's 50% less.
They're up 377 just, which is not the seismic change.
Absolutely not. All it's telling you is there's some disgruntled, ultra-progressive Labour voters out there. I don't think they've created a tidal wave in the same way the populist right parties have.
Folks, we've got so much more to come. I'm delighted to say that the brilliant Paul Cox is staying with me. But what do you think about all of this? Starmer, how long has he got? Also, the Greens, are they a danger to Britain? And can Nigel Farage save the country? Brad says, I can't believe that what happened yesterday doesn't trigger a general election. Out of spite, Starmer could sabotage reform and get away with it because we can't get out of this sticky situation. Be clear, we are stuck with this Labour government, but Starmer, is he not long for this world? So much more to come. This is Talk Breakfast.
Thank you so much for watching. My channel is beginning to grow, and it's much thanks to all of you, and I just want to say a huge thank you. I really do appreciate it. Please do consider subscribing, liking, sharing, and pressing that notification bell so you are notified every time I release a new video. Until next time, keep it real.